Welcome to the Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 293. Protect yourself. I am your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live show where we discuss the ins and outs of running your computer repair business. Let me introduce the co-hosts. We have Curt Soderquist from CS Computers. Curt, how are you doing?
I am doing very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Good to have you here. Also, we haven't seen either one of these gentlemen in a long time. Paul Joyner from Sysadmin today. Paul, how you doing?
Doing very well, Jeff. Thanks for having me back.
Good to have you. All right. And a lot of people probably know Paul from Sysadmin today, which he's still doing that podcast over there. And how's that been going for you, by the way?
It's been going good. Probably the past month, I've been a little bit slower getting out my episodes, but my family life's been changing a lot. My wife has started a full-time job, so we're just a big change. But I got a ton of content ready to go. I just got to get the time to do it. But this upcoming week, I should be getting more back to a normal schedule. But overall, it's been a lot of fun. It's been going good.
Now, so for those that don't know out there, because I talk about this often, and a lot of people, some realize it, some don't. So would you say that podcasting is just super easy?
To me, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of prep work, but when you're actually talking and doing it, that's what's fun and enjoyable, and you're kind of free flow. But all the getting it ready, the post-production, following up, answering all the emails, make sure you're on top of your listening audience. Yeah, it's a labor of love. I'll put it that way.
Exactly. So I think people know that it's normal, especially when you have family say podcasting second, and other things besides that, work, all that kind of stuff. So
that's right.
But yeah, definitely. I know you've been doing it for how long have you been doing it now? It's been a while.
This February coming up will be 2 years, so about a year and a half-ish, something like that.
Awesome. That's cool.
Yep.
That's good stuff.
That's crazy, actually, when I think about it.
2 years. Yeah. You know what? And time flies by.
Ooh, it's very true.
All right, let's go ahead and get into our tips and tricks. So let's go ahead and Curt, why don't we start with you and share a tip or story with us that we could learn from?
I guess one of mine would be, and I got my stemp here and standing outside my window. So what I got going on is I had someone bring in a computer. The screen would stay on for like a few seconds, and then it would just kill. And I was figuring maybe it's just a bad screen. So what I did is did some diagnostics, checked the hardware, wanted to make sure the screen wasn't bad. Come to find out that the connector on the motherboard was bad. So as soon as that chip warmed up, the screen would just go. So pretty much I came down to telling them, hey, we need to replace the computer. It was already 6 years old and it wasn't really worth investing in. So that's probably what I had right now.
Nice. And yeah. And so one of the things, and I've said this a while back, but one of the things I keep telling people, and they look at me like I'm strange. So when you have computer years compared to human years, I look at a computer and I look at it as basically for every year that the computer is old, that's 10 years in human years. So a lot of people that have these 10-year-old computers, they're like, so you're telling me that my computer is 100 years old? Yes. And actually it's probably not 100 years old. It's probably in the grave at this point. So you're pretty much, we need to move on and get something a little newer. Paul, let me ask you a question. As far as longevity and I know you deal with a lot of businesses and stuff, what is your turnaround for computers as far as how long before you tell your customers they need to replace their computer?
I'm going to say it depends. If you're just getting a mainstream computer, it's usually about every 3 years. We do have some customers that get very high-end computers. Like, for instance, we just had a customer that bought like a $3,500 Microsoft laptop.
Surface?
It's the Surface laptop. It's not the actual Surface, but it's what's the name of it? But it's an actual laptop. It's got a keyboard and a hinge and a Surface Book, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
Fully decked out. And that person probably maybe squeeze out maybe 5 years with something like that. And then I'll throw even in servers, we usually have like a 7-year turnaround.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's probably good. Now, how many people actually adhere to those numbers?
In our customer base, in all honesty, I would say between about 85%.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, 15% are knuckleheads or maybe going through hardships from time to time.
Okay.
But for the most part, yeah, I'll say they're pretty good about it. They see the value. Hopefully we've educated them well on that.
That's good. We were talking about this the other day, but one of the things you're spending a lot of money on generally is a phone. And really, you can see a phone. Phones are what? I mean, even though maybe this is not a real price, but this is supposed to be the MSRP is $700 to $1,200 depending on the phone. And this is something that you almost need to replace every couple of years. Not for everybody, but you can feel the age on a phone.
Absolutely.
When it's been a couple of years, not battery life. You've got other things that because they've updated it so many times, it just does not work as good as it used to. Even the higher end name brand phones, they work okay, but you can definitely feel the difference.
Yeah, I have a good friend who's an electrical engineer, and he's saying that because there's so much jam packed in these phones, and the chips are so small, and the transistors in those chips are very small, that those transistors they don't last. They don't have the lifespan. That's why you kind of feel that degradation through the years. And you're absolutely right, because it's so competitive. They're like, okay, this phone can make you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and they put so many features in it, and it's just those little chips. They have a short lifespan.
That's good. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but when it comes to replacing a computer, and I've been buying refurbished business laptops, Dell Latitudes, and you'll get a computer that brand new might have been a couple $1,000s. You get it; it's 3 years old. You can get it for less than half the price, and it's still a solid computer. But there's a difference between the business class versus the regular consumer class, which is
Huge difference.
plastic, and just you can rip apart a business class laptop and put it back together with usually no broken clips or anything. But when you take a consumer grade one apart, you can definitely guarantee that not all the clips are going back the same way that they came out. Because half of them are break.
There's little plastic tabs. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's like, it doesn't matter how careful you are. We, again, talk about confined space. You have this thing, this plastic that's being heated up and cooled down all the time, thrown in a bag, thrown in a car, moved around the table, sat on the bedspread on people's beds, collecting dust and heating up even more. It's just, they're not made really well. So I tell people all the time, listen, you really need to, we're going to start at about $600. That's going to get you a decent laptop, whether it's a refurb or, or a newer one, but that's kind of your sweet spot, and probably going to go up into the $700-800 range to get you something that's going to last you, I would say, 3 to 5 years.
Yep. Sounds logical. Definitely.
All right. So Paul, why don't you give us a story, since we kind of sidetracked there, story or tip today.
Well, maybe this will fall in line with the topic, but just the biggest tip I can think of, especially with the hurricane that just happened, it's on everybody's mind, at least here where I'm on the East Coast, is don't wait to the last minute to develop some form of plan, for some kind of contingency plan. It doesn't have to be the most epic or 3-ring bind, like 15 3-ring binders. These are your plans, but just have some simple procedures in place. What to do if we lose power? What do we do if a whole bunch of people are sick? What do we do if we have internet services out for more than 24 hours? Just have simple procedures in place. And I'm not going to, of course, ever say any business names or anything, but you get those emails going, hey, what can we do about offsite backups? It's like, well, a little late for that now, but you definitely need to make sure you have some simple strategic things written down, and everybody's on the same page on it.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a little bit, because that's a good point, where we need to be doing some of the things that for our customers that they need done regardless of natural disasters and other things, because anything can happen. Fires,
Absolutely.
earthquakes, depending on what part of the country you're in, tornadoes, etc., hurricanes. And I think everybody falls into that category in one form or another.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's go ahead and let's see. My personal tip for today is I got an email from technibble.com. Now, some of you that belong to their newsletter might have gotten this, but definitely if you're not subscribed to their newsletter, go over to technibble.com and sign up, and we'll have a link in the show notes. But they brought something forward that I personally had never heard of. And so I learn something new all the time, which is why I continue to do this podcast. And that is the Microsoft Script Center, PowerShell Script Archive for Text. And we'll have a link for that in the show notes, the Microsoft Script Center. I thought it was interesting because a lot of scripts, people are always asking about scripts, and they're asking for people to write them. And there are people out there that are very good at doing that. So if you need something specific done, but I thought I looked through it a little bit, and this is a good repository to at least get started and familiarize yourself with scripts and what they can do to enhance your business to help your customers. So I don't know, does anybody here actually go there, or if they ever used any of the scripts from the Microsoft Script Center?
I haven't personally, but I'm aware of it. It's that is a good tip. And nice thing about that, it'll give you kind of a template on what the script does, and then you can kind of tweak it and put your own spin on it, and to do what you need it to do. So that's definitely a great tip.
And isn't that what? So a lot of people probably, well, maybe some of the young people don't, but back in the day, when we were making our own websites and doing things, and we had to resize a picture or put something in a certain spot on a website, what you would do is you would go to somebody else's website that already had it like that, and you would look at the code and what they did to actually get it, and then you would copy it and you would paste it, and then you'd make a couple little tweaks to get it exactly where you want it on your website. So it's kind of a lot of people look at maybe as a cheating method. I don't know. I look at it as I needed to solve a problem. This is how I was going to solve the problem, by looking at somebody else's stuff and basically using it for my own. There's nothing wrong with that.
No need to reinvent the wheel.
That's right. Because, the one thing, not everybody, especially in the tech space, not everybody is a good coder. I remember, this is going way back, TI-99, basic language. And I remember writing a video game. It was a little rocket ship, like Defender, I think. And I remember writing the basic code. And I'm sitting there writing it out of a magazine. So I'm writing it.
Brings back memories.
Don't hit the wrong button, because if you screw something up, you lose everything. You got to start over. Because there was no memory. There was nothing to say, it was only good for that term that you were using the computer. As soon as you shut it off, hey, all bets are off.
That's right.
Then we got real slick, and we got a little tape, those rectangle tape recorders that you see, back in the days on, detectives' desks and lawyers and all that kind of stuff. And we had one of those, and my uncle, who did some wiring and stuff for companies, basically made us up a connector to connect it to the TI-99, and we were able to load our game, King's Quest, from a cassette tape. Yeah, it's a little thing with the little rectangle thing with the two holes in it that it's got tape in it. Yeah. Anyways, and when it breaks, you tape it together, and it still works pretty good. Anyways, so what you could do, though, is in that game, you could run the game, and you could actually, on a portion of the tape, I believe, you could actually save where you were at. So when you would go to load the game back in, you could load it back in and start from where you're at, instead of once you turn it off, you lose everything. There was no, when I was playing video games way back then, there was no, hey, let me, I just died. Let me move a few seconds back and start over again. No, it's like, hey, no, sucker, go all the way back to the beginning and start all over again. You guys got it so easy nowadays.
Yep. Very true.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a quick break, and then we'll get into our main topic. For those of you who don't know, and for those that do, the TechCon Unplugged is September 20th through the 22nd, 2019. And it is being brought to you by Paco LeBron and myself. And we'll have some other names we'll probably be adding to that list down the road. Again, this is a conference for us and by us. So it's the community effort of pulling something together, getting together with vendors, and just having a good, a time of sharing, work groups, all that kind of stuff where we can learn from each other, take a weekend away from our business and do something productive where we can learn and take those lessons back into our individual businesses and be that much further ahead. Because every once in a while, you got to pull yourself out of your business in order to advance in your business. And because a lot of times we're caught in that stream where we're just putting out one fire after another, and we don't have any time to prep or prepare or make processes or do the things that we need to do, even though we know it's important and would make our lives so much easier. So that is why we're bringing this. Now, I'm going to announce that it is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So we did decide on, we've got actually a couple of venues. We think we have the venue that we're going to use and it's adjustable, but regardless, it's going to be in Grand Rapids. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We will be bringing some more things. We'll have ticket sales and everything probably by the beginning of October. We're just finalizing some monetary deals, and we'll figure out what we need to do from there. But it's going to be a great event, and it's going to be, I'm going to say, fairly inexpensive compared to other events that we've gone to as far as the city and everything like that. It's a nice place to get to, nice downtown area. John Dubinsky lives there, so it's got to be great, right? And for those that don't know, John is coming back in October to share in the show again. So he took a couple month hiatus, well deserved. Hopefully he's doing some fun things to end out his summer. But anyways, if you want more information, go to techconunplugged.com and you can sign up for the information. As soon as we get some more information put together, we'll get a newsletter out and let everybody know what's going on. All right, let's see. So our main topic for today is, what do you do to protect yourself and your business? And this was brought to us by Curt. And Curt, I'm going to let you kick it off and kind of talk about the things that you have been thinking about when you thought about this particular subject, and maybe some of the things that you're going through right now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so with the idea, what it was that some folks, some techs live in a really small town. They might not see anything that has to do with a lot of crime. And then you have bigger cities that do, and then you got those kind of mid-sized ones that are starting to have that up and coming kind of crime going on. So I live in a town that's about 20,000 people, and I'm on a mine highway that connects, that goes right through Milwaukee into Chicago and so on. There's a lot of crime that's been moving down the highway, hitting towns. We happen to be one of them here. I live in a town called Albert Lee, and let's see here. So June, July, and part of this month, we've had a lot of break-ins, 400 break-ins already for people's homes, businesses, cars. And I started taking the steps where, for my protection for my business and myself and my family, I went and got my permit to carry and conceal. I figured it's a good time for me to do this because of what other people have been dealing with at home. Some people have gotten shot. We've had a few people in their homes that got hurt. Luckily, no one, had death, which is good. So, I'm kind of curious what other people do. You have your insurance for your business that's supposed to protect you in case you have a break-in or a flood or anything like that. It's supposed to help kind of compensate that. Some people like to use video cameras only. I don't have video cameras, so all I have is my handgun. And I need to set up cameras sometime. I just haven't been around to it since I'm still growing my business, since I've been on my own since at the beginning of the year. And Jeff kind of knows about that because I talked to him about that a while back. So I want to get ideas from other folks to see what they do. This is what I feel that is going to help me, protect my family, protect my business, just because of what's going on in this town, on how the crime is escalated. And we don't really see it kind of dropping down anytime soon. It's kind of stayed steady. So I'm taking measurements at home also, not just my business, because I have a storefront. It's the only way my business works in this town. So I want to get ideas, what's cost effective for you? What works best for you? What are you most comfortable with? Some people are not comfortable keeping a handgun on them or keeping one in their shop or whatever, Me, I'm fine with it. I've taken training for it. I think it's going to work really well for me, but I'm open-minded. I like to see what other ideas that people have. What do you think works best? So just fire off anything, I'm really open-minded on this stuff. So I want to hear what other people have to say.
All right. And I'm going to kick it over. Paul, what do you think about protecting yourself? And I know that you work at a company where, this might be a little bit different. I don't know if you're in an office building or whatever, but from your guys' standpoint, what are some of the things that you have to think about when it comes to protecting yourself and your business?
Well, that is a loaded question because my mind's thinking of, well, you have physical security, you have personal security, you have your data, your integrity, your intellectual property security. So I guess I'll start from, I'll say what we do, because actually we are part of our business umbrella is actually we do security. We do perimeter control, we do alarms, we do camera systems, all that good stuff, and it is more affordable than you think. Even if you're a small shop, because we're in a business commerce, so we're like suite mates with another business, so it's open. Anybody can get to it very easily. But I'll start off at the beginning. We do perimeter control, so you have a way that's always being tracked and monitored, and we actually have cameras hooked up to it. So the fact that when you actually hit your badge or your wand or anything, your camera is actually taking a snapshot of that and storing it. You have like glass breakage for like your basic security system. But the trick it is a lot of times you have a security system, but you also have a camera system, but they don't talk to each other. So you want to make sure they actually talk to each other. So when you do have a glass breakage thing, everything's being recorded and everything is time synced. So if you have to give it to the police and evidence, it's all right there. But that's probably I'm not sure how we want to start with it, but I guess from a perimeter security, that's something that we do.
Yeah, I like that because that's really kind of where it starts. You've got to have that outward security. And the other thing that we might want to hit on too is that you're doing that for your customers. So Curt, from your standpoint, when I look at security for a business, your own personal business, the things that we want to sell to our customers is probably the same things that we should be doing for ourselves, backing up, all that kind of good stuff. Now, let me ask you this, and Paul, is as far as the security system, is there any name brands that we should be looking out for or any that we should stay away from?
Well, because
another loaded question.
Well, it's not so much that, it's that that's not my area of expertise. We actually have a whole department that runs that. But I know we do like Honeywell. You have I'm trying to think of it as we just upgraded ours. I'm so sorry. I would have had this but I don't really have a brand that stay away from them. They're terrible. But I don't do it day in and day out. I just know that all these systems are now hooked up to the network, and that's where I come in. So I have to help them make sure that we give them a server, we give them redundancy. So if something happens or you lose power, it can record these events and to make sure that your evidence is safeguarded. But yeah, there's a ton out there. I will say that, and I do know we have a few. Like for instance, I know for access control, we do use a company called Paxton. They're very, very good. And for cameras, we love the Hike Vision. Hike Vision is a great camera brand, very affordable, a lot of features. It's got the capability to put like an SD card in, and so if it can't talk to the DVR system or the NVR system, I guess is what it's called nowadays, it can actually record footage. So those two brands I know, very, very good, high quality, great vendor support. You can't go wrong with them.
Okay. I'm familiar with that brand. I've heard it several times before. And that's another thing that I was talking with a friend of mine at work is that I use Ring doorbell for my front door, but he has actually the Ring cameras around his house. And that's one of the things that we would love for something like Ring to have. Now, Ring's got a security system. I haven't really looked into that yet, but one of the things that would be nice is you can get these cameras on the outside of the house. You can put little solar panels on them. They charge themselves, but there's no way if you lose, power going to that DVR, there's no SD card on there. So that's a critical thing. If you ever want that evidence, you've got to have something that you can record to in case you lose the connection to the network.
Yeah, that could be a whole show. I think the guys, because there's so many critical design elements, and again, the thing about it is the affordability is there, because you think in the system like, man, it's got to be costing me a fortune. You'll be shockingly surprised at how affordable these are. The little panels you put where your door is, very expensive, very affordable. The system itself nowadays are because it's a very competitive market right now, because it's really starting to take off. The camera systems themselves, you don't need a ton of cameras, but they're placed just right. I mean, you could set yourself up a very redundant, very affordable camera system and security system that talks together more affordably than you think.
And that's good. And I think that's the key right there when it comes to security, or that perimeter security, like you've been talking about, is you have to have those two things that can talk together. Because a lot of times you'll see, I deal with it sometimes where I'll walk into a customer's office and they basically have ordered something off Amazon, and it's a secure, it might be a camera system, but it's not necessarily a security system. All it's doing is taking video or taking pictures of certain areas on the property in case something does happen. But to have something where you're notified, hey, something happened here,
right?
And like you said, window breakage or whatever.
Yeah, all kinds of events you can put in there. You can SMS text you, and actually, what's really cool about it, they can actually send you email saying this event happened, and actually give you a screenshot of what's going on. And you actually can get that, so you can see if it's a false alarm. Maybe some kind of moth or something that's flying in front of that's happened before, and it might be just a false alarm. So it's good to have some evidence. So if the police does call you, you can say, no, it's all good. It's just a bat or something flew past or something like that.
Now, speaking of, how many of these things do you guys actually hook into where it's calling emergency services, whether it be police, fire, etc., when it comes to businesses?
Well, I know on the panels, they have buttons for that. So if you need fire or something, and if you're there, you can just hit the button, and then that's pre-programmed behind the scenes to call your local numbers that are part of your regional area. But as far as I know, I think they're all the panels have that built right in. And then you can even take it another step further, Jeff, is in some of our larger customers, I don't say larger, but some of our other customers, the phone system also can be integrated in with it too. And so that all can track, so they can actually, so if you're something was to happen and say somebody dialed 911 from a particular phone, it actually can be set up when the 911 dispatcher gets it. It says it came from the back room. So like a breakage or something along those lines. So you can actually even integrate that in and get some pretty nifty features like that too.
So, Curt, going back to your original, you were talking about ideas and different things, and I think that there's, I personally, I carry too. I used to have rental properties. That's a whole nother story. But anyways, I don't anymore, and they were in a not so nice area, Detroit. But anyways, they when you're thinking about security, and I think everybody needs to think about this from a standpoint of what Paul's been saying, is that from my mind, if I want to start with security and I've got a shop, you want to take some things where you can start with, and I think you can do this with a lot of security systems out there. Maybe you're not getting everything all at once. Maybe you're just getting a camera for the front of the store, and later on you're gonna get a camera for the back room, or you're going to whatever get a camera on the outside of the storefront, that type of thing, and then integrate it with the security system. But I think a lot of times is we'll waste a lot of time and money by ordering the wrong things. At least this is what I see in a lot of the Facebook groups, is people are like, yeah, I ordered this, but it doesn't really work for business, and so on and so forth. So you've got to get something out there that's that people know about, and is something that is expandable over time, where it's like, hey, in most of these things, I think you're right, Paul. If you look at a lot of security systems in a box, there's usually a basic security system that you can start and get set up with, fairly inexpensive. And really, it's kind of the cost of doing business. So anyways, Curt, so what are your thoughts on as far as moving past and getting that perimeter protected?
Yeah. So previously, when I used to work for another company quite a few years back, they had basically what it was. It was just kind of like a cheaper camera system. It was Samsung. And you basically just run Ethernet cable from the camera through the false ceiling. And all it does is run to a monitor. So it's a live feed. It doesn't record anything. But you had to log into it in order to see what the live feed was. So that's kind of what they had at that time. Something like that, I think, is still going to be a good idea for me to do. I can pretty much do it the same way in the office space I have now, where I could run the Ethernet cable. I guess one of the things I wonder is, do I have to have like a separate unit set up that's going to need to record everything? Do I have like a separate box or a PC or whatever that's basically just recording everything each day and then maybe overwrite that later? Or maybe that's a question for the other gentleman. What's going to be easier for me without being too expensive, because I am on a budget and I just need something that's going to work well for me. I'm just a sole owner. I run it by myself. I do everything myself. I have no employees. So, what's your opinion for something that would work really good for my end? That'd be kind of not too cheap, not too expensive. What's your opinion on that one?
Well, I tell you, man, I wish I had some of my coworkers with me right now. I tell you what we're starting to do, and and what's nice about this, it can scale. And the other software I was thinking of is called Milestone. So you have Milestone, which actually does your camera software. So you pay for this. I don't know the cost off the top of my head, but you would pay. It might even have like a real basic version. It's very, very affordable. But that's your NVR. So that's going to record your camera, and that's actually compatible with a software called Paxton that does the access control. So if you want, like, as far as future proof, you can say, well, I can start with this and maybe down the road get that. But from a purely camera perspective, what we've been doing is we used to matter of fact, Milestone used to sell them too. They're called Huskies. They're like big, pretty expensive boxes you would put in. They had all the storage and the CPU and very stripped down version of Windows, very locked down version of Windows. It would run everything there. It's a little bit of upfront cost. So we're actually been steering away from that. So what we've been doing, we've actually been turning up a very, very inexpensive server in Azure. So we put the software on Azure, and then on your network local, you just make sure you have a basic business class firewall that can support IPsec point-to-point VPN tunnel. And then your cameras, like I said, we use the Hikvision. You put your Hikvision cameras in, and then they talk to your Azure server. And so you can start with a couple cameras, pretty expensive, and then you can add more to it if you need to. You can put the SD cards in the camera so you have some redundancy. And if you really want to be redundant, you could put 2 WAN connections maybe on your firewall, so you can make sure you're good to go there too. But So your cost is your cameras, the software for Milestone, and then the Azure. And like I said, for the Azure, you could probably get away, even with decent storage, you're probably looking maybe $50 a month. And then it even depends on what you want as far as storage. So you can say, I want to keep a week's worth, and then it can dump everything over to an archive, and then it'll just overwrite the oldest to newest. And then what you can do is you can really maximize that with your camera recording. So matter of fact, you don't want to record 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You just want to record on motion. And also you don't need 30 frames per second. You could probably get away with 10 frames per second. And also you don't need HD quality. You can just, 720 might be very adequate. And and from what we've seen, what we had to give out to authorities, it's very, very good, very, very compelling quality that you can give away. But that's really our basic. What's really cool about that is as you grow or your building expands, all you do is add cameras. And then if you need more horsepower and Azure, all you do, you can just to keep the server, you don't have to reconfigure nothing. You just bump it up to a higher tier that has more CPUs, more memory, and you just add storage as you need to. So very scalable.
Okay. And are most systems now where they're more accessible, where you can use like your cell phone?
Yep.
And you can just log right in, take a look at maybe what's going on, things like that. So
Milestone, with the software, Milestone has an app you can get from the Google Play Store and then Apple as well. Plus, you can go to it from your web browser. You just log into. You can just create your own. So maybe you have cameras.yourdomain.com or whatever, and log in and you see all your cameras and see what's going on.
Now, Paul, are there services out there with security systems and whatnot that you're aware of, or that you kind of at least know about, that will maybe do recordings in the cloud without actually setting up a separate server and stuff like that?
You can't. The only other one I know, I'm sure there's out there. The only other one I know off the top of my head is Cisco Meraki has camera systems, and the good thing about it is it's extremely easy to set up, extremely redundant. The bad thing about it is those cameras can be pretty expensive, because what happens is you use a Meraki's cloud server, but there's a lot of local storage on the camera itself. That's why the camera's expensive, because they're coming with a good chunk of storage built right in. That's one solution that I know of, but the solution I just described is at a fraction of the cost of that, and you still have full control, full redundancy, full features, and you're in control of everything. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I know that's one. I'm doing some research. I'm sure there might be some others out there too.
Okay. No, I just wondered if there was, basically a kid in a box that
it may be.
Some people out there that some of the things they're thinking about for their shops or whatnot, that they can get inexpensively for somebody that doesn't want to do, a server. And I'm with you as far as it's nicer to have full control over your stuff, whether or not it's on-prem or not. Being in the cloud, so to speak, makes it kind of nice, and kind of it gives you your offsite too. So.
Yeah, from what the guys been telling the guys that work, the old fashioned DVR systems that you used to keep in on premise, they're starting to become the way of like the VCR. They're still around. Nobody's really pushing them anymore. It's not really good. A lot of it's going to, as far as storage and solution and playback and archiving, it's all going to these cloud-based services nowadays. Either one you make yourself, or you can get it from a company or camera company that's giving you these bare bones systems in a box that you can do yourself.
Well, I mean, let's face it. How many cop shows have you watched where the bad guy comes in and takes the tape out? Or the hard drive, or just the whole DVR itself?
Well, if you think, we've seen a lot of cases too where nobody checks those systems, and they go bad, and they haven't worked for like months or years, and they just assume it works because you can get a video feed in a monitor. Like, oh, I'm assuming I'm working. I'm assuming it's recording, but that DVR system could be just completely off.
Yes.
And so these newer systems, you get a lot of alerts and notifications or something if it can't record or if it's down or any of those preventive maintenance monitoring type emails. Now you can stay on top of it.
And I think now this would probably help, I think, too, Curt, from a business standpoint of insurance, right? Worst case scenario, somebody comes in and tries to steal something from you while you're there. Generally, that's most of the time, that's not really what happens most of the time. Now, it could happen. But usually people will try to find some place that's not being monitored, or they think they can get in and get out and get your stuff. And so that preventative maintenance or preventative precautions of while you're not there, I think would also help in the aspect of your insurance. I had, X amount of computers sitting here of my customers, so on and so forth. And a lot of times they're going to want to see that evidence that they were actually sitting there and you're not just making a false claim. So from that standpoint, I think it's important to think about something like this, especially for a storefront. I mean, a lot of people do their own things with security systems and things in their own home because it kind of makes sense. Usually it's the outside perimeter. They're not so much. I don't know a whole lot of people that are setting up cameras in their house because I don't really want to watch everything that I'm doing on a daily basis, but that's me.
Right. One of the things I noticed in chat was there's a gentleman in there by the name of Rick, and he was wondering, Paul, if you could say what that brand that you told me about to kind of start off with for the camera system.
Hike Vision, and that's spelled, I think, HIK Vision.
Yes.
Is the camera brand. Milestone, just mile in the word stone. Milestone is the software that does your recording. You just put that on a Windows operating system as an application, and that's what talks to the cameras. Paxton is the name of the software that does the access control, and Paxton actually does the software and like the components of the access control. There's other components like mag locks and all that links all into it. So there's quite a bit involved in some of that, because usually people who put in access control systems are locksmiths at the same time. And what was the third? It was Milestone, Paxton. Oh, and Azure was the platform that we used for hosting the data.
Now, Paul, let me ask you a question. As far as that goes, when we're talking about these systems, is that something you could actually set up a on-prem computer to do the same thing?
Absolutely. Okay. You absolutely can. And it could be really anything. So you can, if you have just a cheap workstation, you can put it there. Of course, you want a little bit of redundancy if you want like your hard drives or something like that. But maybe the thing about it is you can get maybe 2 or 3, like you're talking about your laptops, you can get a server that's off a lease, that's 3 or 4 years old, put some fresh drives in it, and that would be a great, inexpensive on-premise solution for it too. And before I forget, this just happened, because if I don't do it now, forget about it. We just had this happen, because you're thinking, man, I got all this stuff that's network connected. What if somebody just goes to the switch or the firewall and pulls the plug? And we actually had that happen not too long ago. Disgruntled employee, not ours, but with a customer. Disgruntled employee pulled the plug on the switch, and nothing got recorded. Except you had a few things on the access control cards, but it was there. So a great tip is you want a camera that's shining onto your network switches, your routers, your firewalls, all that right there too. Because if somebody goes in there, you'll have a screenshot of that person pulling the plug on it. And so that's something we're actually getting ready to do. We're actually going to start putting cameras on all the network gear, because it's impossible to think of everything. But I thought that would be a good tip too.
That is, and not only for that, but a lot of us will run into the same scenario where you ask somebody, hey, what changed? What happened? Oh, nothing. I didn't do nothing. And if you had a camera in your server closet, then you go, oh, so you didn't move this cable from this port to this port? Oh, yeah, I did that, but oh, okay. So that kind of 2 birds with one stone. I like it. All right.
Yeah. And I suppose most of these systems are pretty well easy to set up. I mean, we're computer technicians, so we know what we're doing there. But most of this stuff is pretty well simplified for us to do it ourselves, isn't it, Paul?
Yes. I was just because I don't, like I said, I don't do that work as far as setting them up and programming. But I was brought into training, earlier this summer, and I was able to follow very easily. Now, I will say, with something like with access control, you might want to work with a vendor or somebody that does that. But as far as just the DVR of the camera system, absolutely, that can be done by anybody. I mean, as long as you got, a PoE switch, that's probably another thing you'll need for the power of the cameras. And if you're obviously talking about running wire, and you can put it on an on-premise server if you want a cloud-based solution. It's very straightforward.
Now, as far as, so when you look at that layer of security in protecting yourself, you're looking at the video portion, but you were also talking about having that integrated with security, and like a security system, which goes a little bit farther than that. We were talking earlier about glass breakage. And I'm assuming the access control obviously is, getting in and out of the building,
Yep.
and who's coming past that point. So is there security systems that tie into like the hike vision cameras, or how do you have to look at something like that?
Well, it's really with the software. And I'm only going by what I know. I'm sure there's a vast solutions out there. And I really don't consider myself an expert in the matter, but I know that the Milestone software works with the Paxton software. Paxton is the software that does all the access control, so they can link and talk to each other. So, and you hit the nail on the head. So if a user comes in, or this could be buildings in there, you might have access control in the server room or secured areas inside the building. But if you have, when they hit their dongle to trigger the door to open, it'll take a snapshot of that person coming in and out. So who knows that maybe somebody got beat up in the parking lot, took their card, zapped it, and now they're in the building. So those sort of things where everything links up. But I know those two bits of software talk to each other, and it's proven to be a phenomenal system for us. It's very reliable, tremendous vendor support, very easy, straightforward. It's not pretentious software. It's not all junked up. It's very clean, and their app support, because even with the Paxton, you get an app. So if you need to unlock the doors or set schedules, because you can set schedules like holiday schedules when things go on and out or all that, you can do it all right from your apps or from your software.
Okay, awesome. Now, as far as so I guess one thing I want to know about still is a glass breakage control, obviously, which you see in normal security systems in a home. They'll put a little chiclet type thing connected to the glass, which will let you know when it's broken, that type of thing, or a sensor. Somebody comes past that sensor, those types of things. What now? The Paxton obviously is running that access control. What company actually makes like those things that you can integrate into that security system?
The security. So it's really there's three. You got your Milestone, you got the Paxton, you got the Hike Vision for the cameras. I wish I could give you the name brand or the branding we'd use for the security system, like the brains, what you see mounted onto the wall.
Right.
I do know we use alarm.com.
Okay.
As far as the monitoring and, something happens, they're the ones that are like monitoring the system itself. But I cannot think of the daggone name of the panel itself. But that panel, of course, is talking to the network, and it has a web interface, and or you can do it at the panel itself. And Jeff, what I could do is I'll find that out and I'll email you so you can put that in the notes.
Awesome. That'll work. And you've already given most of the information where somebody can find out, hey, what's going to work with this software, whether it be Milestone or the Paxton software, so that it's integrated into that whole network and works together.
Right.
That's good.
And if y'all want, and I think they're pretty straightforward. So if you're a business owner and you want to just be a partner with them, if anything, just to learn about it, get some resources, because they have a lot of training and webinars and all that jazz. It's like most vendors do. I really think it's a pretty straightforward process to be a partner with them.
Okay, cool. Now, Curt, what did you have any other questions or any other things that you thought about? You said, in protecting yourself, protecting your business, after the conversation we've had with we've talked a lot about security cameras and kind of protecting, doing that perimeter defense around your building. Is there anything else that you were looking at as far as this topic?
Not so much. I mean, it's given me some good ideas on other steps that I can take now, rather than just relying on carrying a firearm. So it was just getting at ideas from Paul to find out what's affordable, what I could do myself without having to pay someone else to take care of it or whatever it is, or have them install it. Because I have a small office, it's not very big, but it's going to be something nice to have just for that backup purpose. And something that just takes a snapshot when something moves, I think is going to be just fine for me. It doesn't have to be a constant feed, you know. So you guys have given me some really good ideas. I do appreciate that, Paul, since you do have more knowledge on that than I would. But you give me some really good ideas for me to kind of investigate and check out and see what's going to work best for me.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll get your contact information, and there's some more information I'm gonna type up some stuff for Jeff so he can put it in the show notes. Matter of fact, I just texted one of my technicians to say, what's the name of that brand that we use? But yeah, so I'll try to detail it the best I can for you, Jeff.
That's awesome, and I definitely appreciate that. The other thing too is, and Curt, we kind of talked about this, but this is something that if you do it for yourself, it's also something you can do like Paul and his company's doing, and that is sell that to the customers that you're dealing with. And again, it's about eating our own dog food. Stuff that we're going to use is the stuff that we're going to use for our customers. I never understood people that would use one thing and they would go out and use something else for their customer. It's like, well, wait a minute. Don't you believe in what you're using or what you're doing? So
That's a really good idea. That's a really good idea. I mean, it's a good way to bring in some extra income, offering them something else besides just, computer services. Kind of like me, I'm starting to do stuff where I'm setting up TVs and home audio systems for folks now. Mm. Some people don't know how to do it. No one around here does that. I might as well start offering the service. So for me, it's really easy. But yeah, it's a good idea to see if I can do something where I can kind of resell that security system and maybe have a little bit of a niche in the market, not go full blown, but it's just enough to bring that little extra income in, which is always nice to have for any small business.
Absolutely. You're the expert in your business. So that, that's why it's important when you're using something and you're showing other people that you're using it. It's kind of an easy sell. It really sells itself. Hey, how did you protect your shop? Oh, this is why I got set up. Hey, can you do that for me? It's just, it's no different than setting up the TV audio and all that kind of stuff. Hey, I don't want to drill into my wall. I need to mount this thing. I don't know how to do that. I don't know what a stud is. I don't know what drywall is, whatever. I'm being facetious, but the reality is a lot of people don't really want to know how the donuts are made. They just want to eat them. What were you going to say, Paul?
No, I was just agreeing with you, what he said previously. That's a very true statement.
All right. So I think, let's see. So Paul, I know we just kind of started with the whole perimeter security. Was there other things that you were thinking about when we talked about protecting yourself, protecting your business? Obviously, we've talked about things in the past of doing backups, things like that. You were talking before too about things like natural disasters, hurricanes, which affect your area, and having people calling you last minute going, hey, what about that offsite backup you talked about 2 years ago? And you go, seriously? There's a hurricane coming here. It's going to be, I know they move slow, but it'll be here like before we can do anything for you.
Yeah, it seems to be the customers that, it's the ones you don't manage, the ones they only call you when there's no other resort, they're like, because usually they're
Bob's uncle's cousin doesn't know how to fix it,
or cash strapped or something like that, whatever. But the main thing is, it's not. It takes a little bit of time, and it can be very, very simple. It just have basic, simple things. What we do when power goes out. What's the basic? Is it a short extent power out, or if it's going to be for a couple of days? What do we do? Maybe everybody's got the flu and everybody's sick as a dog. What do we do? So on and so forth. And just it's called COOP or COOP. continuing operations of I can't remember the whole phrase plan. And they break everything down for natural disasters. And of course, your larger corporations, they're going to have like hot sites. So if one phone call center goes down, they can transfer to another physical location. And when people hear these type of plans, they're thinking of that level of complexity, but you really don't. You can just have very simple things. What's your call? Who do you call? Who's your call plan? If the internet goes down, can we still do transactions? Do we have a form we can write things down and put in the system later? Those sort of things, and just to have the time to write those things down, and they're living documents, so you're always updating them because maybe systems change. But that's where it boils down to, and just not doing it at the last second or think about it only when a major storm arises.
So actually having a plan of action in place so that you're not guessing what the next step what the next step you need to take in order to get past whatever this disaster or thing might be coming your way.
Absolutely. And we even had one too where it something else to think about is your lease agreements. We had a situation where the company was a contractor, and then they had a subcontractor basically do most of the work. And so all the lease agreements were in that subcontractor's name. The two had a fallen out, and so the main contractor was going to go in and just redo some things. Well, they couldn't get access to the servers. They could get access to because their names weren't on the form, they're on the lease, so they couldn't get access to the building. So things like that. Make sure those little details. Of course, there's a lot to think about in one show, but make sure you got access if you're leasing it or if it's rented out space. Make sure your names or people you don't want on that list are up to date. It's all kinds of stuff like that to think about, but just having that written down, because when stuff happens, your frame of mind, you're not thinking rationally. Like you were talking about when somebody breaks in, nobody's going to remember to go to the back end of the room and do all these procedure. Your brain's going a mile a minute. So it's good to go to a document where you can say, okay, this is what we need to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's flight or fight response. I mean, that's just the way it goes. It's a 50-50 chance of which way it's going to go. And usually, for those out there that think they know exactly the way it's going to go, it normally doesn't work out that way. But anyways, you'll understand. Hopefully nobody will ever have to go through anything like that. But if you do, you'll see exactly what type of frame of mind. But, when you come down to processes and different things that you do in your life, I think about it even from a standpoint of I have a checklist for this podcast. And the reason I have this checklist is because now for a lot of people, you'll notice that and I shouldn't even say this out loud, not a whole lot goes wrong for a live show that we do almost on a weekly basis. And I feel that part of that is because I have this same checklist where I go through the same things all the time. Now, I have a checklist, and here's the thing. What's funny is I actually forgot to press record on 2 of my devices today. But thankfully, because we're using YouTube, I'll have that recording and I can extract the audio and make the audio podcast. Not a big deal. So I have 3 redundant backups, and things happen. I got to talking. I worked today. It was a long day. Wasn't really thinking. And even though I had that checklist, I never went to the end of my checklist to make sure I had my last 2 checks, which one of them is press record. So, but a lot of the things that I have in there are simple things that I don't even have to think about. So I literally go through the list and go, here's what I need to do. Check this. Yep. Did I shut my speakers off? Yep. Did I shut all my backup software off? Yes. All the things that would take away from being able to do the podcast on my machine, I take care of all that stuff. So it's the same consistent thing every time. Now, Paul, let me ask you a question as far as doing an action plan like this or whatever they want to call it. Have you seen it, or do you recommend to your customers that they take, I don't know, an hour a month, a couple hours a month, or in order to because what I've seen is that you really need to plan something in order. If you just tell your customer to do it, the chances are it will never get done. So what's one of the things that, and how much time should they have to take in order to make this action plan? Or is this something that you come in and you could sit down with them and go, okay, let's go over your processes, what happens in a natural disaster, a fire, a flood, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, that's definitely a service that we provide. We essentially, it's called a risk assessment. You go in and say, you do a full risk assessment. These are your critical areas of your business. These are your critical processes in your business. What can we do to make them redundant and document them? And what can we do in case of disaster, how to back up those processes? Because some things you're just not going to do. It just, if you don't have power or you're not multi-location, you have to wait stuff out. But that's the first step that we do. And then the next thing we do is we go say, okay, we will document everything down for you, or they can do it, or we help them do it, because we have forms that help, or templates, like Word templates that kind of pre-fill out. Because one big thing is vendors. What do you do if a vendor goes out of business? And because in IT, at least with us, our vendors are our lifeblood. If something happens to some of our vendors, we're in real deep trouble unless we have a backup plan okay, if this vendor goes out, we can always fall back on this vendor, so on and so forth. It's just so many things, but that's definitely a service to just make sure the business owner or the management's aware of these things. They're fully documented, and then you start building a living document for your coop.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's good. And now, if you were to recommend, if somebody were to do this on their own in their own business, what would you recommend? How much time do you need to take in order to actually take time away from your day-to-day business and think about the things that you need to put together?
Well,
I know it depends.
It does. If you're going through certain types of compliances, they want you to test your plan once a year. So if you have a hot site, you need to test switching that over. If you have certain other things, what do you do? So they always want you to test that out and document it. Some things you just don't test. So like I said, obviously, if everybody gets sick, so if you have that sort of issue, but as long as it's documented and the documents are reviewed like twice a year, usually it's acceptable in compliance. That's usually what we recommend. Because some are very simple, or a certain event, say if you change a system, say you went from an on-premise system to a software as a service system, obviously that'll put some tweaks in those plans. And as long as the documentation's up to date, that's the big thing.
Okay. So definitely something that needs to be looked at on a regular basis, whatever that company or person deems is necessary. Mm-hmm. But I guess my biggest recommendation is to take the time. We all have things that need to be done in our businesses, and we need to take the time to be able to do those. I'm as guilty as anybody else of not doing the things I'm talking about. Listen, don't just do what I say, not what I do. That's all I'm gonna say about that. And this is a reminder. And when we talk about this stuff, this is a reminder for me of the things that I need to do in my business, in anything that I'm a part of, in order to make it the best thing that I can. And the only way to do that is I have to set some time aside in order to get that done. If I don't put it in my calendar, it doesn't exist.
Yep. I agree with that. I live on my calendar.
I do too. And we talked about it, I think it was last week, but we talked about to-do lists and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, those don't do anything for me. I have to do a hour by hour and leave myself some margin in there of things that when I'm filling those time slots, they have to be filled with something. I'm doing something during that time. So. All right, Curt, let's see. Is there anything else that we can touch on? There's probably a bunch of things we can go into as far as protecting yourself, but I think we've kind of covered a lot of areas as far as not only protecting yourself personally, your business, surroundings, some ways to get started with that, and also helping your customers do a risk assessment to get themselves set up in that in case something happens, break glass and read the list.
Right. Yeah, no, I think everything that we went over today, it's helping me out quite a bit.
Okay.
So to me, I got something to look forward to now. I got plenty of things to do, especially if I have a slow week. At least I can start looking into that and see what's going to work out for me, and then take the time just to get it purchased and get it set up. But otherwise, yeah, we had some really good information, and I really appreciate it, Paul. It was nice meeting you the first time. So,
Same here, man. Same here.
And this is why we do what we do.
that's right.
So let's go ahead and let's take a quick sec before we get out of here. If you are enjoying the content that we're bringing to you on a weekly basis, almost weekly basis, I'd say 50 out of 52 weeks. If you're enjoying this information, I ask you to support the show. Or if you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/computer repair podcast. And what that'll do is that will get you into our secret Facebook group where we share with other techs who are in the business and working on different things. Questions are asked. Everybody is really, really nice because, again, it's one of those things when you're paying for something, people tend to be a little nicer. I don't know. It's in probably because the group is growing. I think we're at 88 now. So it's pretty good. But I want to thank our newest Patreon supporter, and that is Michael Berna. And I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters for your continued support. And I will say this. So a lot of people will notice something that last week, I think it was, I went and friended a bunch of people that were in the Facebook group. Now, some of you have that feature turned off where I got to contact you. And yes, I'm not contacting you. But if you would like to send me a friend request, I'll go ahead and accept that. So I decided to do that because one of the things of having this secret Facebook group and getting people involved in it is it's easier if you just friend me. And once I see the Patreon stuff go through, I'll go ahead and add you to the group. So feel free to do that if you are a part of that group, and I will go ahead and accept that friend request. And then we'll go from there. And then moving forward, that's one of the things I want to do is, hey, just send me a friend request. Let me know that you just signed up for Patreon, and we'll go ahead and I can add you very easily into that group instead of sending links out. And I don't see the group, and Facebook is a big pain in the butt, and I don't like it, but it's a necessary evil, I guess. Yes, I just called Facebook evil. So, but it works perfect for what we're trying to do here and share information and whatnot. All right. I think we've gotten a lot of good information out, and I want to thank each of you gentlemen for coming out. And I'll tell you what, Paul, if you want to let people know where they can find more about you and contact you, and I know you're an open book, and let them know about where they can find your podcast.
Sure. It's sysadmintoday.com. There's ways to contact me on there. Previous episodes, a resource page that seems to be pretty handy. So yeah, I'm definitely available. You send me a question, and I'll definitely chat you back. Might be a couple of days, but I'll get back to you.
You know what? It doesn't. Here's the funny thing about that. What really gets me is when people don't say anything. Like they'll ask you a question, you give them an answer, and they're not like, "Hey, thanks," or whatever. And it's like, I get it. People are busy. It's hard, but I'm like you, Paul. I actually reply. It might take me a little bit, and that's fine, but I will reply to all emails that come in, no matter what.
I do too. Yep.
All right, Curt, and nice having you back, and glad things are going well in your business. Why don't you let people know where they can find you, and we'll go from there.
They can reach me my email is Curt, C-U-R-T, at CS Computers, which is plural, .tech, T-E-C-H. You can find me on Facebook also. When you look up for CS Computers, just look for the one in Albert Lee, because CS Computers seems to be a popular name all over the States. Otherwise, yeah, that's the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Yeah, it's not as bad as the people who've taken my business name and changed it slightly and stolen it all over the country. But anyways, hey.
Right. And I do appreciate you getting me back on the show. I miss seeing your smiling face there, Jeff. So
My smiling, sarcastic face. Yes.
right.
One of the things that I always laugh at sometimes is we go to these live events and people will meet me for the first time, like physically meet me, and they look at me and probably about halfway through the day or something, they'll go, I just can't believe it. And I'm like, what? And they go, you're exactly the way you are on the show. And I'm just thinking, from my head, I'm thinking, actually, I say it out loud. Why would I be any different?
Right.
I am who I am. You either like me or you don't. Doesn't matter to me. But no, yeah, we just like to keep it real. And this is the stuff that we do on a day-to-day basis. And this is how we learn new things. As I always say, if you're not learning something new every day, you know what? Just call it done and get on out of here. All right. Come join us live for the Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnutz.com/CRP live. Join in on the conversation by hanging out in the chat room. We get some good interaction going on there. You can send an email to podnutz@podnutz.com and we actually read it on the show. Or you can leave a voicemail at 734-335-1000 and we will play that on the show. I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on the Computer Repair Podcast.